Hey, we have an awesome one today. And if you're a Salesforce partner or a consultant, SI partner especially, you're definitely going to want to listen to this one. Today we have Avinash Boyana. Thanks for joining the podcast today, Avinash.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think I've been looking forward to this discussion. I know you and I have chatted a few times, many times already, and I'm really looking forward to kind of digging into what you do, what you're seeing in the industry, especially with SIs. So I guess just to kind of kick off, um, from I know you got into Salesforce at some point. What did you do before you got in the Salesforce ecosystem?
I was right out of college. So wish I had a better story to tell, but it was like I'm a byproduct of recession, like that crazy 2008, 2009 period. So I was in B school, got into one of the top B schools in India. Obviously, felt like, okay, I've made it, but then recession hit. But since luckily I was in a good B school, I got like a campus offer. So I joined and I was told like, you're going to be the business analyst in our Salesforce.com practice. I was like, sure. I mean, like first job, I would paint walls if I had to like, so I didn't choose Salesforce. Salesforce chose me. I stuck with it. And we know like, because back then Salesforce was an SFA tool. It wasn't even like CRM. And since then, Salesforce took off. I just project after project, delivery after delivery. So I just stuck with it. I was like, okay, this seems promising, and I'm glad I stuck with it because 15 plus years looking back, I probably wouldn't have. I had made a better career choice other than like starting within Salesforce, like fresh out of college.
Right, as a business analyst, that's a great spot to start. A lot of people come from the admin, dev, but the business analyst side, I'm assuming you were seeing all aspects of the implementation, seeing the business side, the tech side. And then how did you go from business analyst? Where did you go from there? Because I know we'll talk about Deloitte and all that stuff. So after you were a business analyst, where did you go after that?
I mean, it was a very funny experience. Like I was a business analyst. Coming out of B school thinking that you're really important and like companies are literally waiting for you. Like that reality hit is like, no, you're just one employee. Like, and in fact, you are the only person in the team with zero knowledge of the product. Like even like a 21, 22-year old would know more about the product than you. It's like I had like zero understanding. All I was doing, like I was obviously put into pre-sales. So I was doing a lot of pre-sales work, but fresh out of college, no industry understanding, no subject matter expertise. All you can do is like make a bunch of phone calls, have people send their content, copy paste everything into a 100-page Word document, format it. Like literally that kind of a data entry kind of work I was doing. And I looked around like that's apparently all PE school grads. That's all they were doing. So my manager one day he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, look, you want to build a career in Salesforce.com?" I said yes because that's what you would say to your manager. You wouldn't say no.
Right.
Say like, look, I'm going to give you an advice. Um, Go back and learn the product. I mean, like, what do you mean? I asked like you need to get your hands dirty because you can't sell something you don't know. If you don't know what this water bottle is all about, what it contains, you can never sell this to me. And you're trying to sell a product that you have absolutely no understanding. So he pushed me into delivery. So he pulled me out of pre-sales and he put me on a project. Obviously, I was billable, so it's good for the organization. But also like I want you to like deliver projects, get your hands dirty, forget about drop that B school chip off your shoulder. It won't take you anywhere. Just work with the developers, start configuring, start building, and then start selling. So from then, like almost until like 2013, 2014, I was just hands down delivery. Obviously, I was never at coding. That's the reason I chose to do MBA after engineering.
Yeah.
But I was like working with the developers, doing a little bit of a configuration, doing a lot of functional validations, getting good understanding of like Salesforce.com in the process, obviously getting back then it was like Dev 401 certification, then the admin certification, then the Sales Cloud certification. So that's how I could get a handle of the whole Salesforce. Then CPQ happened, back then big machines. I was doing Sales Cloud plus big machines delivery. Came to the US in 2013. 2014 is when again started getting into the some of the selling mode, because I spent like good 3-4 years knowing the product, so I felt like I know what I'm talking about. So that was probably like the first career advice I've ever received.
Is learning to sell, or just the general one in general, doing implementation and leading implementation teams?
Yeah, learn the product first, like before you can start getting into like some of the lead kind of roles trying to sell, but first understand, like start from the ground up.
Right. So you had a good 5-6 year run, because that was one of the spurts in Salesforce as well. There's like these kind of spurts, and then it kind of goes down a little bit, and then it explodes again. So I mean, you must have been on a wild ride as well, because that was probably a lot of things you were learning, a lot of projects you were delivering, and I'm assuming it was kind of a crazy time.
It was because I was doing an engagement with Xerox. I was working with a company called Wipro, and Xerox, they were like out of the London office. It was like Uxbridge, this area is called. I was living in Bangalore, India back then. They would just call and put me on a flight because come UAT, they would like we just want you to be here. You could absolutely run that being remote. Like I wasn't that important. But it was just that time where budgets were getting approved, money was not a problem. They would just fly me to London like every for 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes they just extend it to like 6 weeks. So think of it like a 26-year-old, like no
Yep.
family, no strings attached. Sure, why not? I'll spend the weekend in central London, work Monday to Friday. It was a very different time.
Yep, for sure. And then I think at some point you also got into Deloitte, and led the growth and expansion of the Salesforce practice there. How did that all come about?
So I pivoted to Deloitte in Jan 2015. I was recruited into their Oracle CPQ practice with big machines. Did some work in that space. And 2016 there was an absolute slowdown. Like, that part of the business, there was no traction, like no projects being sold, nothing's being won. I was like, literally, we used to call in consulting about it like being on the beach. I was on the beach and I was just like chilling. And then I was just attending some trainings. This was pre-pandemic, so travel was approved. So I would once go to Chicago, once fly to San Francisco, just network with other Deloitte partners, hang around. Then one day I get a call from a partner saying that, hey, I'm starting this cloud trace practice in Deloitte. Do you want to help build this for me? And back then I wasn't even a manager. So if you know the big four structure, people under manager, like even under senior manager, don't usually get this kind of an offer. So these offers are made to people like manager and above. I was like, sure. I mean, the name sounds funny, but I don't care. Like, if you want me to build a practice, I'll go do it. So
Right.
that's how the whole cloud tracing started. And boy, I was wrong. I completely underestimated the amount of effort it takes to build a practice.
Yep.
Little did I know, next I was like thrown into sales calls. I was flying week after week to Chicago because Cloudflare is based out of Chicago. So I was working with their leadership, building the GTM for CloudTrace and Deloitte. The upside is like I've made some really good friends in that company. Some of them are with Salesforce now. Some moved out in a different journey. The founder, Ray, is we were connected. He's doing something else in the whole future of work space, like the gig economy space. Again, that was like an amazing learning experience. And yes, I was so wrong. My whole understanding of building a practice was like completely different.
Yeah, it's just like you were whatever, drinking from the fire hose for a while, like in your journey in your career, especially in that practice. And I think you had to scale it to a pretty decent size, right? I mean, you took it from a fairly small practice to a pretty big one, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. We were literally three people. Like we were the team. We didn't have a team. The only difference between us and like a startup was that, funding wasn't a problem. Like Uncle D
Right.
had the money. So I never had to worry about the money. It was that apart from that, everything else was the same. Like there was no direction, no people that you could look up to where you just had to make all the decisions by yourself.
Yep. And I think fast forwarding even to now, because I know you work with SI partners after you kind of wrapped up all that stuff, and I mean you obviously have gained a ton of knowledge and learned a lot of things, seen so many different aspects. What's your view on the current Salesforce SI partner ecosystem as of like 2025, just in general?
It's oversaturated and overcrowded is probably an understatement. It's that crowded. It's like a jam trying to find a parking spot in a jam-packed shopping mall in one of the Asian countries. If you have never traveled to Asia, you should probably YouTube it, like how some of those malls are, how busy they are, trying to find a parking spot. It's that packed. I 10 years ago, it was a completely different story, but now, oh boy, it's so crowded.
Yep. And the what is your view on, because I know what you do is help SI partners. So there's is it a lot with it's over being overcrowded, what are some of the differentiators that partners need to think about so that the parking lot analogy, right? Do you need to have a red car to stand out with you know, ways to stand out or come early, or what are some of the aspects you think can Salesforce partners do to differentiate and find a parking spot for that analogy?
I'm glad you, I'm glad you asked this question because I can't stress enough on this. Like always, coach founders like pick your lane, literally a lane. Don't pick a street, pick a lane. A lane would be like, for example, we are a health cloud SI partner. That's not a lane. That's a gigantic, as wide as street. Like that's like it's almost a freeway. You need to pick a lane. Like for example, we are an SI partner for the healthcare industries that are manufacturing certain products, or we are an SI partner for window manufacturers. That's the lane. And again, the lane is better if it's tied to your customer's end product than the Salesforce products. Like for a manufacturing cloud SI, it's not really a differentiator. But an SI for a niche manufacturer is a lane.
Right.
Obviously, the major pushback is like, it's too narrow. What if, how do we survive? But if you think of it, the TAM is huge. It's in billions and billions of dollars. The lane, even if you pick a lane, which you absolutely should, you're still looking at TAM anywhere with like 500 million or above. It's still huge. There are enough players for you to go after. And we can get into like why we should pick a lane and all that stuff, but that's one differentiator.
Yep. And I think I've been trying to think about it in percentages, think about this, because I think there are SI partners. There's obviously SI partners that get work from Salesforce, right? That's perfect. There's probably 10% of those. And then there's partners and consultants that also are able to get projects here and there, hourly based billing. They have a team of 8, 10 people. They have existing clients. They're making some revenue. They might not scale, but they're kind of just sticking at this 5 to 10 person shop, which is great, making revenue. I know we've chatted about it as well. It's tough to make even a pivot when you're currently in flight or you're serving multiple clients and it feels like it's working. And then there's the partners I feel that are also not getting traction. They're getting a client here and there. They're different industries, they're different sizes. The case studies are all over the place a little bit, and they're also trying to find their way to find the parking spot, right, and to differentiate. That's kind of how I view the breakdown from my perspective. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And like just to be clear, it's nothing wrong being a Salesforce custom shop. It's still work. You still get paid, but ultimately, what matters is what's the outcome for you. Do you want to sell, or do you want to just run it for like the next 10, 20 years, hand it up to the next generation, or just shut it down when you want to retire. If it's the later, fine. You'll continue to generate positive cash flow. You're working for yourself. You do it for as long as I'm sure you will make some investments, put money aside for retirement, no problem. But if you want an exit, that's when you need to, because not a custom Salesforce shop is a good business to own and run, but a terrible business to buy. So if you don't have the clear differentiator, your business is not sellable. If you want to sell
Interesting.
it, it needs to appeal to the buyer. And the reason, and a buyer would look for like clear differentiators. Like, do you have a unique position in the market? Do you have IPs? Do you have all the good stuff? Because when, if you think about it, someone who's trying to buy, what they want to see is like a year from now, when you as the current owner, you vanish from the business, will I be able to run it?
Right. Because you
So, and if
and
it's
yeah,
and if
because
it's
you're
easily replaceable, then it's trouble.
yeah, because I'm thinking about that. So is it not that it's a headache, but if you buy a consultancy that's just doing custom work, you have the founder that's leading everything, you have a bunch of Salesforce folks on staff. Is it also is one aspect that they can purchase many different versions of that? There's so many of those out there, or is it also that not a headache, but it's if they buy it, they know that they have to do all this work to find a niche and differentiate to drive revenue and streamline everything. Is that kind of the two aspects of it?
It's just that our has a low barrier to entry. And most of these are like personal relationships. Like over the period of time, like you as the owner of your SI, you would have built relationships with your customers. Tomorrow, when your customers know that you're no longer part of the business, you're out, you sold it to someone else, they'll be like, well, I don't know this new person. They might have a near friend, like this, someone who's like a plan B that they never worked with because they really like you. Now it's only human for them to consider plan B versus trying to build that relationship with the new owner. Not saying that you're going to lose your customers day one, but you do risk. And acquisitions is all about like de-risking, like
Got it.
because you would be selling at a multiple, so you'll be making a profit. So that person is already over, I wouldn't say overpaying, paying more from as compared to what this business is currently generating. So they need to recoup that investment and earn more so they can have some upside. So for that
That makes
reason,
sense.
like customer concentration, lack of differentiators, it's almost like a red flag. Like people would just right away they would just pass off on the deal, and it happens all the
Interesting.
time.
Yep. And I think you mentioned outcomes and outcome based pricing. And I think that that's one of the biggest questions I have in challenges, especially because a lot of the SI founders come from a tech background, not necessarily a business background. So they're kind of learning business and offers and pricing. And it's always like hourly rate, right? The first thing people do is hourly rate. I'll give you 100 hours for 150 an hour. They do a chunk of work. And that's kind of the model that they do. Then there's some right. You could do RFPs, fixed fee. So
Mhm.
you have a fixed scope. It's $10,000, whatever the number is, and there's deliverables specifically laid out in a SOW. You have to define the entire thing, and then at the end, the client typically pays at the end after they see the result. Maybe you get an upfront or middle, but
Mhm.
it takes a lot of time to define the SOW before you start. You have to get agreement everywhere, and then the third one is the outcome based pricing, which I think is fascinating. I know we've chatted about it a bit, but what's your view, or what is the concept of outcome based pricing?
I feel like it's a need of the hour. I've been pushing that heavily to the community, and again, that's where one way you can differentiate yourself, and it's not easy. It's something like it's a KPI driven, meaning if you get it right, and we can get into details like how to execute that and all of the stuff, good stuff. But if you get it right, but what you're achieving is you're forcing your customer to get their KPIs right, because Post go live, the only thing matters would be the adoption. And the adoptions, they're not tied to the user stories. They're not tied to the lines of code that you write or the Apex classes, triggers, whatever flows you create. They are tied to numbers. And numbers also, we call them like business objectives or KPIs, whatever terminology you want to use. That's what's going to matter. Typically, what happens is these things are like documented very early in the process and they're just forgotten. Like, they're just words there. We'll just focus on the requirements. They just focus on the user stories.
Right.
But with outcome-based pricing, you are forcing your customer to get the KPIs right because you don't want any vague KPIs because you don't want to be measured against vague KPIs. If it's 50% reduction in code time, you want to work towards that as part of your build so that go live, this product will achieve 50% reduction in code time. Because you're leaving money on the table, you're risking your money. That means you will push your client hard to get their act together. Ultimately, towards the end, it's a win-win. Like you win, your customer wins because adoption rates are good. Then their stakeholders are happy. Everyone's happy. And you're no longer a situation where you go live 6 months later, the client calls and say, "Hey, adoption is bad," and you'll be like, "I'm sorry, too bad, but we're out of contract, so you're on your own." That's
Right.
what's happening in the space for like many years, since many years. Now with this whole AI of like consultants being replaced, clients squeezing the money out of consultancies, this is
Right.
one opportunity where you can actually take a step back and pump your chest and say, like, we're not a cheap development shop, and this is how we're going to prove it. So you want to pay us more because we're going to deliver. We'll set you up for success. Like we'll make you successful. So your success doesn't come cheap. So
Right.
don't try to talk us on the pricing. We are not just an the
Right.
agency model, right?
Exactly. Yep. So if I look at a sample, like if I did a outcome-based pricing project, is there typical phases? Because I'm assuming there's got to be some time spent up front, right? Especially to define these, making sure that they have even visibility into the KPIs to be able to even demonstrate it. What are the typical phases? Because I'm assuming there has to be some time investment from the SI to get engaged, define the KPIs, do some initial work before you could even get to the outcome-based pricing side, I would assume, right?
100%. In fact, I prepared a laundry list, a checklist called as like the helpless check. If this is something that you would perform on a particular engagement, it's not binary. It's not like a zero or one, whether this client is a fit or this client doesn't a fit. It's your understanding of where this particular client sits in terms of their readiness to towards outcome-based pricing. And it's to give you some understanding. It's a basically a check which talks about, okay, do they have the right systems in place? Do they have the metrics in place? Do they have the tools to measure adoption post go live? So you're trying to assess, how ready they are for the outcome-based pricing, because your outcome-based pricing is typically a combination of milestone and KPI driven. Meaning, yes, you would collect some money upfront at the time of SOW, but then you would also start getting paid by milestones, meaning, let's say, for example, exit build, go live, you get paid, and then there's a portion of your the the contract value that you leave like up till like post adoption. So yes, there's a good amount of work that a SI needs to perform just to understand, where this client is and how ready they are, what are the risks, what are the challenges, so that you can tailor the whole your pricing structure accordingly.
And I think you mentioned because I think you named it a health check, and I think you used assessment as well. And I think in the Salesforce ecosystem, I just want to make sure people understand, because I think when people think assessment, they're thinking like a tech debt assessment and like a technical report. But from what you're mentioning, this is more of a like a business readiness health check that involves maybe the tech assessment's one aspect, but it's way more, and it's the other stuff is way more important, and it I'm assuming it deals with, do you have the right people in place to support our project? Do you have users that can test? Do you have the right systems in place? Is that kind of the categories?
100%. And like, do you have the right stakeholders? Do you have buy-in from the stakeholders? Like, will people be involved and engaged during the process? Even that's part of. So it's can almost think like a checklist, like just go through check, check, check. But yes, technical is probably like just one line item there. So there's this technical, there's functional, there's project management related, there's change management related, stakeholder management, uh, bunch of other stuff, like anything and everything that you can, any function that you can think of in terms of an engagement that's like directly or indirectly impacting revenue, you would have it there.
So then what happens if they're not ready? Right? Like, does that, right? Like, what happens in those scenarios?
That's where, as an SI, you use your judgment. You have an option. The easy route is like, this client is not ready. I'll just do T&M, be done with it. Or you could take a hybrid approach saying that, okay, my client is not ready. It's a risky situation to execute outcome-based pricing. So maybe first release, I'll propose T&M, but I'll use that first release duration, which is probably like 6 to 9 months, like conservatively, most Salesforce projects, to coach my client and get them ready for the outcome-based pricing. Because now you're part of the system, you have direct access to them. Coach them on the model, tell them like the benefits and everything, also show them where they sit right now. And because you know how the difference between like, and everyone knows that they need to get from point A to point B, but you know the path to go from A to B. Show them the path, get them ready, and when they're ready, so maybe phase 2, you can roll out outcome-based pricing.
Right, because this gives me like two thoughts, because I think people throw around the trusted advisor thing, right? I'm a Salesforce partner. I'm your trusted advisor. I think this actually truly reflects the business or that company, the client, seeing you as a trusted advisor. And I also think it's why it's so critical to stay in your lane and have a niche. You talk their terminology. You've been, hey, here's the results we've seen working with client ABC. And I think you're able to have a better perception of being a true advisor to the client that you're working with in this model, and likely they're more open to making the changes, taking the health check and moving forward, because you truly are a trusted advisor at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no better way than letting your actions speak for your words. Like that's the best policy. I always believe in that. Like you can speak as much as you want through the jargons, but once you start delivering, like putting those words into actions, just the actions will speak for itself.
And then is the team that goes in and does the health check, is it typically like a lead consultant, an architect? Is it like a business analyst? Who typically drives the health readiness and that whole aspect of it from like a role perspective?
It could be more than one person, depending on how your organization is structured. But it's definitely someone at the project management or the engagement lead kind of level. So this person should own this. They can always take an analyst with them to help them out, like an additional hand and legs, maybe a technical person if there's a lot of technical stuff that needs to be reviewed. But someone who owns the engagement should be running this.
Okay. And then I guess the one question people might have as well, so what happens if you don't meet the metrics at the end?
And so that's where you're putting the risk. And it depends on how you structure the contract. So you're getting paid by milestone. So it's not like you're 100% you're leaving on the table. But if metrics don't meet, and if your contract says that 25% of revenue, for example, is tied to adoption, then you basically lose that money. So that's the reason it's very important for you to make sure those KPIs are absolutely spot on. Like you are comfortable with those KPIs, because it's your money that's at risk.
Right. That makes sense. And I think that led you, because to kind of back up and fast forward. So you left Deloitte, and now you started your own what I call it, agency, consultancy, or advisory service. I guess you started what you're doing now. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So like mid 2023 is when I moved pivoted out of Deloitte. I'm a one member team. I don't have anyone. It's just myself, and I do a lot of fractional work. Like I enjoy working with Salesforce SIs, like the founders, CEOs, help them in whatever fashion. It could be GTM and Alliance. It could be the whole delivery engine, meaning like bringing the best practices that I built in Deloitte, applying those with this current SIs. And the third being the solution selling. Or it says that I'm not a good commissions based selling per se salesman. So account sales is something that I would stay away from. But if you get me a qualified lead and if you want me to run with it just because you're short on bandwidth, I'm happy to do that. So these are probably the three major areas that I work in.
Cool. And one more thing popped in my head. So just or even terminology, because solution selling and outcome-based pricing, are those one and the same, or are those still two different things?
They're two different. By solution selling, what I meant was like, RFPs, like, just
Okay.
pre-sale, the whole pre-sales work.
Okay. Got it. Oh, got it. So fractionally, you work with SI partners, fractionally, which is awesome. So I guess that's your focus now. Where are you going in the future? Where are you taking this? What are you in next to 3 to 5 years? Where's Avinash going to be?
No, we didn't talk about it. I also have my the acquisition angle where I acquire businesses. I bought one just as I was coming out of Deloitte. Unfortunately, tried to acquire a Salesforce SI, spent close to a year, didn't really work out. Happy didn't it work out. But but that's the plan. Like over the next 1 to 2 years, maybe I'll be getting back into that mode. So if there's any Salesforce SI founder, CEO listening to this, if exit is on their mind, our criteria is very simple. The business needs to be like at least 3 million in EBITDA. So if it's 3 million EBITDA plus, which usually like the lower middle market segment, that is probably the business I would be looking to acquire. So yes, the next step would be to get full time into acquisitions and make that a career.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. And I typically end on that, but then I just think this is a lot of there's a lot of value in this discussion for partners. What advice would you give for SI partners that are starting out? I know we talked about the oversaturation, etc. Is there like even just one piece of advice for a new Salesforce partner starting out? Maybe they've been doing it 6 months, a year, 2 years less, and they're trying to scale a little bit. Is there like one piece of advice you would give them?
One piece of advice I would give them is like network, like build those relationships. And I'm almost advising people to stop spending time because time is such a critical aspect for especially like really, really small size. Like they just don't have time. They're already like buried deep. Don't waste your time on the Salesforce events. Go spend time in the industry events. Like for example, if you manage manufacturing, spend time at the manufacturing events because those are the events where people are coming with real problems and you just happen to be the person who can provide them the solution. Versus if it's a Salesforce event, they already have an SI, they already have someone, they're just coming to like learn what's happening in Salesforce. So you're not of an interest to them. They're there to just network with Salesforce or just learn some cool stuff like what's happening with whole agent force.
Right.
But if it's a manufacturing event, the focus is not on technology, it's focused on the manufacturing problems. It's a great learning experience to really understand what your customers' pain points are and an opportunity to slip in your services.
That makes sense. Because I agree. And it's great. There's Salesforce events, but I do agree. It's like SI partner meeting SI partner, right? And you're networking with people, but you're actually in that scenario, you're meeting the clients where they're at. And you won't have a bunch of Salesforce people all around, and you can actually have some good dialogue with those potential clients. I think that's wise. I like that. I like that.
Sure.
Awesome. And so if someone wants to reach out like a partner or a consultant trying to scale as well, how do they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best way. It's open. People can DM me. If someone wants to just connect, LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch.
Perfect. Awesome. It was fantastic having you on today, Avinash. That was a great discussion. I think it's great for SI partners as well. Again, if you're a partner, reach out to Avinash. He can help you in many ways, especially with D to M and fractional work. So thanks a lot, Avinash. It was great having you on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. It was lovely chatting with you. Thanks for having me on your show.